Hello everybody, welcome back to Firefield Junction, and I've got another review for you today. And this particular one, I think this is going to be rather special, at least for me anyway. Today, as Loco, as we can see, we've got a Class 31 for us today. But this particular one is rather special because, as we can see, it's DCC sound, but it's also, this particular one is in the railfreight red stripe livery. And I'm pretty sure, at least I find, getting hold of Hornby Class 31s in this livery can be quite hard, especially getting this particular one with the sound on board. I've only ever seen, I think, one of these for sale since I started with model railways around 6 or 7 years ago. So getting hold of this particular one may be quite hard. I certainly don't see many of these around. You may have seen more of them for sale than I have, but I certainly haven't seen many of this particular one for sale. Hornby have done a couple of factory sound Class 31s. Obviously this is one of them. They've also done a rail freight subsector one, which I also have, and I have looked at that one as well. So if you want to go and check out the review of that one, then certainly feel free to. But as we can see, this particular one is in the rail freight red stripe livery. Originally, I wasn't really looking at getting this particular loco, but eventually, just one day, just seeing one for sale online, it was a relatively good price, in my opinion. Well, maybe slightly more than probably what I would have wanted to pay. But considering how rare this particular one seems to be, I thought I might as well jump at the chance. I like the Hornby factory sound locos. They're usually quite good, so I thought so in the end I thought, yeah, why not? I might as well go for it. And now this particular one is 31247. Now the Class 31s in real life, originally they built around, I think, around 20, sort of a pilot batch of them to sort of test them and see what they were like, and they were impressed with them. So in the end, a total of 263 Class 31s were built, and they were all built and out running, but I believe by 1962. This particular one, 31247, was reclassified when they brought out the computerized TOPS system and everything. This particular one was renumbered from its original D style sort of number. It was renumbered to 31247 on the 31st of September 1973. And this particular one managed to stay in service until the 4th of February 2000, and it was eventually scrapped on the 30th of June 2003. So that's a bit of a shame. This particular one is not around anymore, but there's still quite a few Class 31s in preservation. One of them is still mainline registered, 31128 in BR Blue, and there's also, I'm sure there's probably one part of the National Collection in York, and there's definitely a few on various heritage lines around the country. And overall, yeah, a very nice diesel locomotive, I think. Very successful. Early on, I think they had a bit of problems because originally these were built by Brush Traction in Loughborough. However, I think it was between 1965 and 1969, they re-engined the Class 31s with English electric power units, because originally the original mirrorless engines, they had quite a lot of problems with those apparently, so they re-engined all of the Class 31s over around a 4-year period or so with English electric engines, and they were obviously more successful, and I'm sure that's probably what we're more used to today. And yeah, overall, a very nice diesel, I think. It's definitely one of my favourites, I think. I definitely prefer, I think, the 37s and 50s probably, but this is definitely in my top 5 of classic diesel locomotives. They really are nice. I haven't actually seen one yet, in real life. Well, I might have done actually, but off the top of my memory, I don't think I have. So it'd be really great to try and see one day. I definitely need to go to a few more diesel galas and heritage railways and everything. I was going to go to the Severn Valley Railway one this year, but trains are on strike again, so that's not going to happen. But anyway, we won't talk about that. So this particular model from Hornby, it is quite an old model now. Definitely probably getting on around 15 years old or so. Probably around that. It's probably not quite that old, but I'd say roughly around there. The decoder, it is proper factory sound. This decoder is, I believe it probably is a V3.5 decoder. However, there's still something, another reason I got this loco was partially because of the sounds. Because as I already have mentioned, I have looked at the rail freight triple grey subsector Class 31 that Hornby did. That's around the same age as this, and that's also factory sound. However, I was fairly certain that the sound file in that, or the decoder in that, was not the original decoder, because when I actually went through and played a load of the sounds and tested the sound file, a lot of these sound functions didn't match up with the instruction sheet inside, and the sheet that lists all of the sound functions. Most of them did not match up with what it said with what function it said that they were in the instructions. So like, for example, function 4 was so and so, but it actually ended up being something else or whatever. This particular sound file is different to that loco. So unless maybe Hornby just did produce a couple of different sound files for these locos, I'm not too sure. But this loco and the other 31 that I have with the factory sounds, they both have different sound files. So either this is the correct sound file for the factory sound 31 that Hornby did, or the other one is, and the previous owner just reconfigures the functions or something. I'm not too sure. But this sound file is different. But again, it could just be Hornby. Maybe this particular loco in real life had a different engine to the other 31 that I've looked at. Maybe because they're different subclasses. I think. I could be wrong. To us, I think both of these are actually 31-2s. I think. I could be wrong though, but they're definitely different sound files. But we'll obviously hear that later when we put the loco on the track, and I'll obviously compare it with the other one as well. So yeah, we'll do that later. But obviously this particular one is, well, railfreight red stripe, as I already mentioned. On the end of the box we can see. Now this is interesting. On the actual sleeve, it does have the correct information, so we can see there. BR railfreight, diesel electric class 31, 31247. But on this particular end, it says subsector for some reason. So yeah, as I was saying, the running number is definitely the same. It says 31247 on the box, and on the sleeve here it does say the correct number. So unless maybe Hornby just got it wrong when they typed up this, but obviously it's definitely not a subsector. It is railfreight red stripe. So maybe that's just a slight error on Hornby's end, but everything else is correct, and the model code is correct. Obviously still class 31, sound decoder fitted. So it might just be a blunder there made by Hornby, but I'm sure we can look over that. Obviously the back of the box, it's the usual stuff. So there we go, class 31 there. All the information there about the 31, and it talks there about this one in real life as well. It's basically everything I've just mentioned though. It talks about sort of the first 20 that were built, 263 in total, 1962. And we can see there, as I mentioned, redrawn 4th February 2000 and disposed of 30th of June 2003. But if you want to read through all of that, then obviously feel free to. But we won't waste any more time. Let's open the box and have a look. So it's typical sort of packaging from around to this sort of time when this model was released. So we've got the sleeve on the top there, and then we've got the typical sort of Hornby box in the centre. So if we just take this out, there we are. So we can take off this sort of white sleeve there. So we've got the usual instructions here. I'll just very quickly flick through these. So there we go. So it's typical stuff. So class 31, DCC ready, DCC fitted, and sounds. So we've got the general stuff. So it's literally everything that we're used to, just general stuff. DCC ready, where to put the chip, maintenance, and yeah, typical stuff. Accessories. I'll definitely fit some of these buff beam details at some point. Body removal, which just 4 screws, and the body should come off fairly easily. Talks there more about lubrication, and you trust me, you do not need much oil when you lubricate these. Literally tiny amounts, that's all you need. Because remember, this is 00 gauge, it's 1/76 scale, so you do not need much oil at all. And then we can see there the difference about the factory sound loco chassis and the DCC ready ones. Obviously this being the factory sound version, it's going to have a 21 pin decoder there. The speaker is in the centre. And then obviously you've got the fan mounting there as well. But obviously if you've got a DCC ready one, it'll be this bottom one here with the 8-pin socket. The circuit board is different as well. So all the usual stuff there. So if we put that to one side, we can then see there we've got this as well. So this is the digital sound sort of instructions for the loco. So that's all the important stuff here. This talks about the chip, programming it, all the different sounds are just there. It talks about CVs as well, all of good stuff. So if you're not familiar with DCC sound, so if this is your first sort of factory sound loco, and you're not very familiar with DCC, it might be quite helpful just reading through this, talk about various things, even running on DC operation it says there, which you should be able to do I think with this sort of decoder maybe, but I wouldn't recommend it to be honest, but you probably could. So yeah, all the important stuff there. So put that to one side. And then we can see the loco there. Now the first thing that's quite obvious, well to me anyway, is some of you might be familiar. The shade of red on the sort of sole bar there, it is darker than it should be. Hornby did, I think this is quite a common thing across all of the railfreight red stripe logos that Hornby did. I know the 56 that they did as well, I think was similar, at least on older batches. This shade of red is incorrect. It should be a lot lighter than that, and I think even maybe the yellow and the grey might be slightly too dark as well. But it still looks okay. It doesn't bother me too much, but that shade of red is incorrect. But anyway, we'll look over that for now. So we'll just take these end bits off. They're a bit tight. There we are. We'll get rid of that front bit as well. We've got some accessories as well, just over here. So just here we've got the couplings. They are NEM couplings. They probably might be able to have them in with the logo in the box, but I wouldn't recommend it. Actually, if you took this bit of foam out there, you might be able to put the couplings in without them getting damaged when you put the logo back in the box. Obviously, as we can see, they're just here at the moment, but they'll be nice and easy to get back in, and they should just slot back into the dovetail connection, sort of around here underneath the cab. Because they are kinematic couplings on this loco, but luckily on this one, on these locos, they seem to work fairly well, so that should be fine. Just put those to one side as well, and then as we can see here, we've got all of the buffer beam details. So it's usual stuff. So we've got some sort of air brake sort of hoses, electrical cables. Chain link couplings as well, I think. So all the usual stuff. So I'll definitely fit some of that to at least one end of the loco at some point. So that's good. It's nice to have that. But if we just lift off this top bit, and then we can nice and easily lift up the loco, and we can get rid of the packaging. And there we are. So if I just spin her around, and there she is. And wow, I think you could agree, she is fantastic. Decent amount of weight, which is nice, nice and heavy. There are no traction tyres on this loco, but that's what you'd expect on this sort of Class 31 from Hornby. Obviously, they do a railroad version as well, and that's obviously much lower quality, it's cheaper. But I wouldn't recommend going for it really, unless you want to, or for whatever reason. I would recommend going for these if you can, because especially these older versions of the Class 31 from Hornby, you can get them for some fairly decent prices. I would be careful because they are quite common sufferers of the Mazak rot. But hopefully, if you do get one, hopefully you should hopefully you'll be lucky with it. But yeah, especially the older Hornby Class 31s, they can suffer from Mazak rot. If you don't know what Mazak rot is, it's basically when you get lead impurities in the zinc alloys, and especially in the Class 31s, that can mean the whole chassis block can crack and fall to pieces. And obviously, if that happens, well, there's nothing you can do about it. You can either buy a new chassis block for the loco if you can, or you'll probably just have to scrap the loco for parts and maybe buy another loco or something. There's a few different options you could do, but yeah, if you do get a loco that suffers from Mazak rot, well, unfortunately, you're a bit screwed, to be honest. There's nothing you can really do about it. You could, if you wanted to, depending how serious the problem is, you could try gluing it back together. But again, I wouldn't really recommend it. Because not only does Mazak rot obviously cause the whatever parts are affected to crack and fall to pieces, they can also warp, they can expand. The old Helgen 47s, I believe, are quite common from suffering from it as well. Especially on those ones, the chassis tend to expand and the body around the cab ends up cracking. And obviously, if that happens, then you're definitely going to have a problem. But hopefully, if you do get one of the locos that's a common sufferer of Mazak rot, hopefully you'll be lucky and you'll get one that's decent. It doesn't tend to show up until quite far down the line, and it does happen very slowly. But yeah, if you do get it, then it's a bit of a shame, really. But anyway, with that aside, the loco itself, it appears to be absolutely fine. We've got some nice metal sprung buffers, which look very, very nice. You've got metal handrails around the cab doors. The doors do open as well. Oh, that's brilliant. I know it's a pointless feature. I do get people saying that, and I have seen a lot of people say that the opening doors on these models, not just on the 31s, but HSTs, the Hornby's Class 60s, their 56s. I know a lot of people say that opening doors, they are a really pointless feature, but at the end of the day, they look better than standard molded doors. It's a nice premium quality feature, and especially at today's prices, that's a feature that you should be getting. I think that's the main thing really. It's just a nice feature to have. Again, I know it's pointless, but there are people out there who will use it, and I have seen it done. And again, it's a nice premium quality feature that you should be getting, especially with today's prices. It's definitely a feature that you should be getting. The front of the loco is just as good as the sides. Again, you've got more handrails. That feels a bit delicate. You have got working lights. So we've got the tail lights there and there, and the headlights are the top lights there and there, and then they glow a nice yellow colour, and they look quite good as well. There is no cab lighting, but you could fit some if you wanted to, I suppose. Or is there cab lighting? There might be actually, but I can't remember. I don't think there is though. But there might be. I haven't really noticed, to be honest. But it might be there. But again, I don't think it is on the 31s. The only loco from Hornby that I know at the moment to have cab lighting is the HST. I don't know if these have it. Again, they might, but again, I'm not too sure. But we'll see later, I suppose, when we put it on the track. The unframed detail is not too bad either. The bogies have quite a nice amount of detail on them. A lot of it's uncoloured, but it still looks good as well. You've got separately fitted steps, various other details that look pretty good. The pickup mechanism on these models is done through the axle boxes. So there's a strip of metal that runs down the side of each bogie on both sides. And if I can show you, it might be quite hard, but inside the bogie there you go, you can see there, you got proper bearings there, and they do the picking up of power. And I find that this is probably the most reliable solution, because you've pretty much got a permanent connection there. The only way that that's going to get affected is obviously if you don't look after the loco and you just let it run for years and years without cleaning it. Eventually that will get dirty. You really don't want to lubricate it. This is a problem I have had on previous locos that I've got that use this type of picking up use this type of mechanism for picking up power. Is I have had them come, and the previous owners have lubricated these axle boxes, obviously thinking that it'll help the loco run better and reduce the friction. But obviously, if you put oil, especially a lubricant that doesn't conduct electricity, that will prohibit the performance, and it really does. I do promise you. For those of you that have seen my review of the Civil Engineers Class 50 from Hornby with Sound, 50015, that loco took me a very long time to get it running as well as it does. Because when I first got it, it barely picked up power, and that was because the previous owner had lubricated the axle boxes with typical standard oil, and that was stopping the electrical connection between the wheel and the bearing to transfer the power. So I've actually had to clean all of those axle boxes out on both bogies several times, and sometimes it's quite easy to do, sometimes it's not. These bogie frames are held on by a couple of clips just there and there on both the 31s and the 50s. Sometimes they come off quite easily, sometimes they don't. But again, yeah, you need to be careful. Do not lubricate these axle boxes, definitely not with a non-conductive lubricant, because it will prohibit the performance of your model, and cleaning it up is quite a bit of a pain. So yeah, definitely don't do it. But going back to the model itself, it looks really good. The livery application is spot on. Well, in terms of how it's been applied, it's good. Obviously the colours aren't quite 100% correct, but the way it's been applied is spot on. There's no blemishes at all. All of the grills look really good, and I think they are properly separately fitted. I think they're separately fitted grills. They look like it, and they certainly feel it as well. The glazing has got all the lining on it as well. The roof itself is fantastic. You've got separately fitted sort of panels and handrails on the roof here. The grille is etched piece as well. The fan on this model should actually spin, I think. That should be an operating fan if it hasn't been disconnected by the previous owner already. I will be disconnecting it at some point, but I'll probably leave it connected for the review at least. This loco does need a bit of a service actually as well, because it hasn't been. I've literally only test ran this loco so far, so I will give it a service and a run before I actually give it a run during the review, just to make sure that it's running as best as it can. Last time I tested it, it was okay. but it's a bit jerky, so she's definitely gonna have a bit of TLC before we run her. But as she is, well, I think she wins by default compared to my other 31. With my other 31, the subsector one with sounds, that barely worked when I got it, because that needed a full strip down and a clean. But this one has been tested on the small sort of test diorama board that I have, and the track on that is filthy, and this loco ran happily backwards and forwards on that several times. So I know that this one should be much more reliable to start with anyway. But as it is, it's a fantastic loco, I think. You really can't go wrong with these Hornby Class 31s, unless you obviously get one of the Mazak Rot affected examples, and then you should be fine, because they are fantastic models. The most recent ones at the price that Hornby are asking, no, probably not worth getting them. Akira Scale's new 31 looks fantastic. I'm sure I'll get one of them at some point. But if you do want to get a Hornby one, I recommend you do. Just don't pay over the odds for them. But they are good models, and I think you can agree from the detail and the application of the livery and the features that you get, they are worth it, and they do run very well as well. So let's put her on the track and see how she runs. Before we do that though, I obviously will give her a quick service and give her a clean and give her a run to make sure that everything's fine, and then we'll come back, we'll get her on the track, we'll test the sound, we'll give her a run, maybe run her with my other 31 as well, get them double heading on a nice big freight train maybe, and we'll really see what she's like. So I'll see you in a second up on the layout. Okay, so here we are finally over by the layout. I'd get used to seeing this layout while it's still here, because eventually, fairly soon, probably over the next month or so, I've decided an entire current test layout is going to be ripped up, and I'm going to build a new one. As nice as this layout is, and it has served me quite well for a long time, obviously most of the time all I've been doing really for the past few years or so is just expanding it every now and then just to make more room. However, I haven't really got any room left currently with the way everything is set up. Plus, this layout is not really that enjoyable just running on it anymore, really. There's no way for me to sort of do any interesting running to make a general operation a bit more interesting, a bit more enjoyable. So eventually, fairly soon, this layout is going to be fully ripped up. I'm going to have to shove all the locos probably into storage or something, or at least just put them out of the way temporarily. And I will build a new test layout that will hopefully be a bit more interesting to run on, and hopefully it will look a bit better as well, because this one definitely is a bit sort of just chuck stuff down wherever there's space. So yeah, it's not the best test layout in the world, so I will be building a new one, but we won't be doing it quite yet. We can still enjoy it for a little bit longer. But anyway, here's the loco. She's been serviced, and I've also fitted the buffer beam detail to one of the ends there. I hope you can see that. It's all just been glued on with a little bit of super glue. It is quite fiddly to do though, so you really do need to be patient while doing this. But once it's on, it does look good. And then at the other end, I've put one of the couplings on, and I've still put a little bit of the detail on the end there, but most of the detail would interfere with the coupling, so I've just put those two little bits on there just so it's not completely bare at that end. But anyway, if we put the loco onto the track, it should be nice and easy to do. There we are, and she's all been programmed. I've changed various CVs just to try and get her running as smoothly and as nicely as I can. The motor is still quite a noisy one though, despite me giving everything a nice lubrication, putting some oil on all of the gears and everything. I even gave one of the drive shafts, I took that out and put some oil on the bearings and everything because it sounded like it was a bit noisy. Even the motor shafts have had oil applied to them because they sounded a bit dry and a bit noisy. However, the logo is still quite a noisy runner. I'm not really sure what else I could do. It's probably just because of how old she is. That's why she's probably quite noisy. However, with the sound running, you can't hear her. She's definitely more noisy though than my other Hornby Class 31. But hopefully she should be fine now. She's definitely quieter than she was when I first ran her and gave her a test. So hopefully now she should be a lot better. But anyway, before we get her running, we will just flick through the sound instructions and I'll play some of the sounds. Now I have already gone through the sound file and listened to all of the sounds and gone to check to see what they're like. and I'm fairly certain this sound file is the proper factory sound file that Hornby did for these Class 31s. My other 31, just here, I'm pretty sure the sound file in this is not the original, unless both of them are the originals and Hornby just used different sound files in each loco. However, the sounds in this, in the railfreight red stripe one, all of the sounds in there match up to the sound instructions. Most of the sound, basically most of the functions in this one though, do not match up with the instructions. So I'm fairly certain that this one is not the original chip, and this one is. I'm pretty sure these sound decoders can't be reblown. So unless someone unless this chip in this is a different one to what was in the factory or whatever, I'm not too sure. But I'm pretty sure this one is the sound file that you get with the factory sound Class 31s from Hornby. But anyway, if I just put the other 31 back to where it belongs in its siding, there we go. And now we can listen to the sounds on this loco. So if we just open up the instructions and flick to these sounds, there we go. If I can get the manual to stay open, there we are. So I'll just move it out of shot for you. There we go. I'll leave functions 0 and 1. So obviously function 0 is just the lights. We can turn those on in a moment, and obviously function 1 is the actual engine sounds. But we'll start off with function 2. So that's one of the horns. That's quite nice. And function 3 is another horn. A bit quieter, but still not too bad. Although when the engine's running and it's when the loco's running at full throttle, you can't really hear the low air horns. The high one though is very good though. Function 4 is the coupling apparently. However, it doesn't sound what I would classify as a coupling sound though, but it must be. Function 5 is the compressor. That's not too bad. Function 6 is shunting mode. Now I believe what that does is that just makes the loco run slower. I think it halves the speed compared to the regular factory settings. So if I actually just get it moving a little bit. There we go. If I activate function 6, we can see it actually does slow down. So that's all function. That's what the shunting speed does. It basically makes the loco run slower. And I suppose it is more realistic for shunting to get her to run slower than what you probably wanted her to originally. But there we go. Function 7 is brake release, which we can't play without the engine running, but that's fine. Functions 8 and 9 are notch up and notch down, so that basically increases the notch of the engine sound whilst not affecting the actual movement of the loco. So we'll leave those for now. Function 10 is the sand valve. That's not too bad. Function 11 and 12 is a couple more horns. It's not too bad. Function 13 is the air horn signal apparently. And that's quite a nice horn actually. Function 14 is ventilator. That's not too bad. And then finally, function 15 is the conductor signal. And that's not too bad either. Now there are, I think some of the horns on here have been also put on other function keys, because there are also horns on function 16, 17 and 18. However, those functions, they're not extra functions. They are the same sounds as what's on some of the other function keys. But some of the horns can be played on two function keys, it seems. So if I do functions 16, 17 and 18, there we are. So basically the horns that are on function 11, 12 and 13, for some reason on this decoder, are also on functions 16, 17 and 18. Maybe that's just the previous owner has remapped the CVs so that those functions are on two different keys. And maybe that's the only way I can see it, unless when the sound was loaded onto this decoder and it was programmed, they made a bit of an error or something, I'm not too sure. But anyway, at least we've got a nice range of sounds there. and they all sound pretty good. Anyway, we can put the instructions to one side now. So put those out of the way, and we'll fire up the engine. We'll put our lights on as well. She is a little bit echoey for some reason. She wasn't like that earlier. And it could just be that the screws, because I did unscrew the speaker and the circuit board so I could get access to the drive shaft and everything underneath it. It could just be maybe that the speaker's a bit loose or something. I'm not too sure. But it'll be fine for now, it's not too bad. But let's get it running. Well, she's running quite well, I think. She sounds amazing. Overall, a really fantastic loco. I can't fault it, to be honest. That's one thing with these Hornby factory sound locos. Whilst they are quite old, the price that you can get these for is definitely very good compared to brand new releases of factory sound locos. Especially from the likes of Bachmann and Hornby, I think. And overall, I don't really know what to say, to be honest. She's amazing, she's absolutely fantastic. She's a great runner, a bit noisy, which is a bit of a shame. But at least with the sound runner, you can barely hear the mechanism. The sound file is fantastic, excellent sounds, nice range of functions, really smooth performance from the decoder. Overall, I don't really know what else can be done to this one to make it better. I think the main thing is it would be nice if the motor was a bit quieter. So I don't think there's really anything I can really do to make the motor quieter. But overall, she's great. If you want one of these factory sound Class 31s from Hornby, I recommend you get one if you can. It's just a shame that they are quite rare, so getting hold of one probably won't be the easiest thing in the world. But if you do manage to get one, then I'm sure you won't be disappointed. And now let's have some ratings for what is overall a very nice model, the Hornby Railfreight Red Stripe Class 31 with DCC sound. First of all, detail. Overall, I can't find anything wrong with the detail. It's really, really good. I think it's got to be 10 out of 10 for that. The wealth of separately fitted parts is fantastic. You've got all of the bogie detail, various separately fitted handrails on the side and on the roof. You've got the extra grille, even the grills on the body are separately fitted. Overall, I just can't fault it. The detail is fantastic. The loco looks amazing. The delivery application is spot on, apart from the incorrect shade of red on the sole bar, I think. But overall, it's amazing. Detail, it's got to be 10 out of 10. It's just fantastic, I think. Performance, however, though, not quite as good. I've given it 9 out of 10. Whilst it is really good, it's smooth, it's fairly quiet. It's just the noise of the motor, I think. I think that's the only thing that lets the performance down. Whilst I know a noisy motor you can't always help that. I think with this one, it could have been helped, maybe. I think it should be quieter. It definitely can be quieter. Again, it could just be the model's age that's the reason why this motor runs quite noisily. Because again, I have edited various CVs to get it to run smoothly and more quietly. However, it is still fairly loud. But with the sound running, you can't really hear it at all. So that, I suppose that does help. But the performance, apart from the noisy motor, it is good. It's smooth, especially at the low speed. It is quite nice. Yeah, overall I can't really fault it, to be honest. Overall it is good, it's just that noisy motor, I think. The quality, overall, the quality is good. I've given it 9 out of 10 because overall it is really good. The model is built well. It does feel quite sturdy. I suppose the only thing is the bogies on these, especially the bogie frames, they do feel quite delicate. They do feel quite delicate. I think that's the only thing really with these. It's the bogie frames. Whilst they are still quite sturdy, they do feel quite delicate, and I think the couplings as well. The kinematic couplings on these, whilst they do work quite well, they still do feel quite delicate, and I think that's I think that's the thing with kinematic couplings across most models. Really, they do feel quite delicate. So whilst overall the quality is good and the model is built well, there's no glue anywhere, everything's straight, everything's really good. I think it's just probably the flexibility of those couplings and the delicacy of the bogie frames. I think it's the main thing, but overall the quality, it is good. Value for money, however, I think is the worst thing with this. Whilst it is still good, I have given it 8 out of 10. I paid £192 for this model from Hatton's second hand. Whilst I know this model is quite rare, I think it's very rare to be honest, because you don't see many of these models for sale and you don't see many of them around. I still think the model should be cheaper. Whilst it is a good model, again, it's got very good detail, it runs well, and the sound is really good, and the sound encoder is fairly high quality. I still think this model should be a little bit cheaper for what it is, because again, it is quite old, it's not a brand new model. If this model was newer, then that price would probably be more justified. But with the age of this model, because it is around 15 years old, the price I think should have been cheaper. So I've given it 8 out of 10. Whilst overall it's not that bad, I think the model still should have been a bit cheaper. But overall, no major complaints with it. So overall, that's a total of 9 out of 10. Overall, a really nice model. I think it should just be a little bit cheaper, and maybe the quality and the noise, and most noise should be a little bit better. But overall, those things aren't too major. Overall, it's a great model.